this is a nothing. Yes, did they play perfect? No, they still win. Yes.
What are you doing if the Celtics win the championship?
If the Celtics win championship, I might break my sobriety. I might act up.
We did it! You got him.
All the way.
Celtics versus Heat. Celtics in what?
4.
Celtics versus Knicks. Celtics in
4.
You got Celtics in 4? Hell yeah.
Use a vocab word from a couple years ago. It's mind-boggling.
That's it, GRG. Let's go. What do you think tonight? You think I'm worried about the Warriors? I ain't worried about them. Let's go, baby. 18, baby. Load up the boat.
Why would you say that?
Because
I'm not. No,
recently he's putting up games like.
Above our head for the players.
Literally right now.
But I think when Marcus, especially Marcus, when he got traded, I think that was a wake-up call.
You think right now
Rob,
it's still New York?
I do. And when I think of the Celtics dynasty, honestly, one of the first names that comes to my mind is actually Brad Stevens.
Woo.
Wait,
Man.
wait. Is it? Are we not roll? Do we not roll it after
No,
almost?
no.
Almost
We
lost
got
it?
we got to figure out how to roll it with the new intro video.
Whatever.
but-
Okay.
Honestly, they don't deserve it. They don't deserve it.
They don't
Yeah, they
deserve
don't deserve it. I mean, a win is a win. And I think that's going to be the catchphrase or the saying of this post-game show. Guys, what is going on? Welcome back in to another Celtics Talk Weekly post-game show. I am your host, Rob Atain. Joined with me, my two co-hosts, Justin Lowe and Seamus Zarlingo. You guys know them. Guys, the C's tonight, a win is a win. They managed to get a win back at home, bouncing back after that horrid Kings game just the other night, 120 to 119. A wild ending there. Tatum, 2 missed free throws, a couple of bad shots by New Orleans leads to a Derek White 5-second violation, which probably should have been a timeout, but who cares? Eventually, the Celtics got the stop on the defensive end of the floor. Finally, and the New Orleans Pelicans, the 8-win New Orleans Pelicans, look even better for their position on Cooper Flag. And the Celtics, well, they pick up a much needed win. Guys, I feel like this post-game show, we might have a lot of different perspectives on this. And I'm prepared for it. I'm ready for it. So let's get this thing started. Initial reactions, thoughts, takeaways on this win.
Well, to start off, as you mentioned, we're going to say it a lot tonight. Despite what thoughts we have about this game, I'll put it in a different form of it, and I will say when you are struggling in the middle of the season, and something that Seamus and I and Randy talked about the other night, January is a tough season in the NBA, especially for teams like the Boston Celtics. It's really the dog days of the NBA regular season. When you're struggling, when you haven't been playing well, you're coming off honestly one of your worst, if not the worst, loss of the regular season on Friday night against Sacramento. You come out and you get a win on your home court. That is exactly what the Boston Celtics did. Did we like how they did it? Probably not. Probably weren't the biggest fans of how they got the job done tonight, but at the same time, they found a way to win, and they got themselves back in the win column. They lost 2 of their last 3 games before tonight, so a win was much needed. How? We would have liked to beat the worst team in the NBA by a significant amount of points, but right. When you're also struggling and you're also not having not having an easy time finding ways to win, tonight is definitely a great step in that right direction. Obviously, we saw Jayson Tatum tonight, who we're going to talk about a little bit later on in the program. He was phenomenal tonight. If it wasn't for Jayson Tatum, we wouldn't be here back in the win column, and we'd be talking about how the Celtics have now lost 3 of their last 4 games, right? But instead, the Celtics get a much-needed win on the parquet tonight. Again, maybe not the prettiest wins, but they got the job done tonight, Seamus.
Well, yeah, I believe this game has to be put into perspective just a little bit, because you look at the record of the New Orleans Pelicans, and one of the first things you think is, this team is horrible. This team is a team we should blow out by 50 points, like the Toronto Raptors on New Year's Eve, because of their record. Yet, we see the Pelicans team that was out on the floor tonight. That is just not the team that represents that record whatsoever. That record comes from when the Pelicans were injured the entirety of the first half of the season. This was, I believe, their first game in which they really had a full, healthy roster. They mentioned it on the broadcast. I believe it was Zion and CJ McCollum
Ingram
and
was out.
DeJounte Murray's first game together, all healthy this year, if I'm not mistaken. We would have to get the actual. Regardless, the health of the New Orleans Pelicans tonight was something that we really have not seen all season long out of New Orleans, and the record in which they have right now just doesn't represent the team that was out there tonight. I think the team we saw from the New Orleans Pelicans, they're much closer to the top of the Western Conference than the bottom, even though they're 15th in the Western Conference right now. I think coming into the season, a lot of people had high hopes for the Pelicans after trading for DeJounte Murray and with the roster in which they had coming into this year. But tonight was the first time in which they really represented the roster in which people felt good about coming into the season. So this win for the Celtics, they did grab it over a quality New Orleans Pelicans team. Now, the record doesn't suggest their quality, but the rest of their squad, you have Trey Murphy, CJ McCollum, Zion Williamson back in the lineup. This New Orleans Pelicans team is a lot more quality than what the record suggests, and the Celtics were able to go out there and get a win. And yes, the the phrase of tonight's postgame will be a win is a win, because
Right.
you really want to see a better performance out of the Boston Celtics. Now, statistically, the Boston Celtics dominated the Pelicans in this game, outshot the Pelicans, out-rebounded the Pelicans, destroyed the Pelicans in the paint, yet 1 point win. And if you watch the game really on film, it didn't really feel like the Celtics dominated this game whatsoever. And the Celtics, particularly on the defensive end of the floor, struggled tonight. I think the team's intensity just isn't quite there defensively right now. The little details just not being hit at. We saw it on film the other night against the Sacramento Kings. Now, I think tonight was a lot better from the Celtics standpoint than what we saw against Sacramento. We didn't lose by 17. We didn't give up 38 points in the fourth quarter, and the effort level was a lot higher tonight than it was on Friday against the Sacramento Kings. But again, with the details with this team, offensively and defensively. Offensively, it seems like we're a little too hectic on offense. We saw early on, and we settled in throughout the game, but early on it was shot chucking all over the place. It was back to just hucking up threes, jacking it off the catch, just anything that the Celtics could get up and get their hands on, they did in the early portion of this game. And defensively, New Orleans got downhill too easily in this matchup. And the Celtics, I think later on in the season, we're going to see more physicality, more intensity out of the Boston Celtics than we're seeing right now. But as of January, the intensity just hasn't quite been there on both ends of the floor. The attention to detail just hasn't quite been there. But tonight, 120 to 119, you certainly enjoy the win, but how it came out and how it came out near the end, the Celtics certainly got lucky in this one because they weren't exactly paying attention to the details down the stretch. But again, a win is a win, as we're going to say about a million times on this post game tonight.
Right. I thought outside of Jayson Tatum, the starters played pretty atrocious offensively. I thought Jaylen Brown did a lot of the utility things tonight for us, which helped us. Passing well, rebounded well. I think defensively he was all right. Again, Jayson Tatum, he helped, but big prop to the bench tonight. I think the bench really did their part. Pritchard, Horford, Luke, obviously, and then Hauser got a bucket in there as well. I think overall, I'm not pleased with this win, but again, winning cures everything. So while I could be a lot more angry, I'm not. I do think Boston really struggled here to play a complete game. I think you saw stints where offensively they looked good, but defensively they couldn't get it done. And then defensively they were getting stops, and then offensively they were collapsing. And it didn't feel like at any part of this game Boston was kind of able to just play a good set of basketball on both ends of the floor. And I think that's kind of why we resulted in only winning by a point, was just kind of that inconsistency on both ends of the floor.
Here's the thing I really don't want to man, I hate this because I sound like I sound like a guy calling it a Falgar and Maz at like 2 in the
Where's
afternoon.
Franco when you need him?
But it's clear to me that the starters need to figure it out.
Right.
The starting lineup needs to figure it out. And I know that they've been there. I know what it takes. I know they know what it takes to be there in the end. And I know, Seamus, we're only in January, so I'm not pressing the button. Relax over there. I see
No more 50-minute
you look like one of those
conversations
cars
over
that you pull back and you just wind it up and they're off. I don't think I'm not too overly concerned with the starting lineup, but I haven't, and you guys know him. He's my favorite player. I haven't enjoyed watching Derek White recently, fellas.
So I have a question though.
Go ahead.
So, and again, I hate to harp on the starting five a lot, but my question would just kind of be: this shouldn't be a thing, right?
Why? Like the expectations are high with the starters, as they should be. Like this is a starting lineup that dominate, and I understand. Oh, Porzingis, he's just getting back. He's just getting acclimated. How much more longer can we really acclimate him?
Well, I mean, it's not just that, because I think that's an excuse, though, is my thing. Where I get it, right? You know, it's a lot of time off, and they need time to get back into the flow of things. But I think a lot of it is self-inflicted wounds with the starting five, where it's like, okay, sure, like, yeah, you know, they need some time to look a lot better, but their play style just isn't even comparable to where they once were. Like just the style of in which they're playing, not even like the product, not even like, you know, it's just they're not playing the same. And I think that for me is kind of where it's like, okay, that's self-inflicted, and that's the one thing you don't want to do. So like, well, I agree. Yes, they need some more time, right? They've played 4 games together over the past 8 months. Like you need more 6 months, you need more time for sure. But I will say it's a lot of self-inflicted. Like it's like they're doing it to themselves.
I haven't even enjoyed watching the starters play without Kristaps Porzingis, and this is, people are blaming it on Kristaps Porzingis. I don't think it's at all. I think it's them as a collective group. I mean, these guys have played enough games together. These guys have been through the ups and downs together. And listen, they are, like, I'm not saying they're not allowed to have a few, you know, bad games or bad stretches. Like, guess what? It's not only basketball, that's life. Like you're human being, you know, as much as we all think that these guys are, you know, gifts, you know, these guys are no different than us. They just know how to dribble basketball for millions of dollars better than we do. I don't, on the other side of that, I don't see why the Celtics starting lineup is struggling so much, turning the ball over. They're getting a lot of defensive mislaps, which I don't see happening. And we broke a few of them down in that Sacramento game the other night. Seamus and Randy and I did. This starting lineup really needs to figure it out, because we know what we can get out of the starting lineup. We know what we can get out of the starting lineup on a nightly basis against any team. But I need to see the consistency of that. I do. I need to see the consistency of that. And you said it best, Rob. A lot of it feels as if it's self-inflicting. It's not like these guys are getting run off the court every night. No, a lot of times, and I hate to say it, but Jaylen Brown has been turning the ball over a hell of a lot more recently. When he dribbles into the lane, and obviously tonight we're gonna speak a lot of good things on Jayson Tatum on this specific game tonight. But on Friday night, I believe he had 8 or 9 turnovers. So Derek White is usually not a turnover machine. He's felt like a turnover machine recently. Drew Holiday not able to finish like he used to be able to. So even that
he's not able to. He's just not. He's not trying.
He hasn't, right? Yeah. And I don't know. An eyebrow is raised. I can't really do it. There we go. An eyebrow is raised. Seamus can't really. You can do it. You can do it. I do want to raise an eyebrow to the Celtics starting lineup, because I know they're capable of doing it on an every night basis, but I really want to start to see that. There's been far too many times this year where the Celtics have got off to horrendous starts, slow starts in this game. I get it. We have 28 wins compared to 11 losses. So, you know, we are finishing a majority of the games out, but I need the Celtics to start off better, because guess what? There's going to be nights where, and recently we haven't seen very good production out of guys like Peyton Pritchard and Sam Hauser and Nemish Queta and at times Luke Cornette. We haven't seen that so consistently. So we can't just wait around for, you know, Peyton Pritchard, so first quarter P coming out. We can't wait for that. The Celtic starters need to figure it out.
Well, I want to break this down from player to player, because we talk a lot about the Celtics as a collective group, but sometimes I feel like we need to name names. This year, let's start out with Derek White. Derek White has been utterly atrocious for half this year, and it's funny that people still think he's supposed to be in the All-Star race, because
I agree.
That just hasn't been the case at all for Derek White this season. He's been chucking up shots. He's not making his shots. He's not being aggressive going to the hole. And what's unfortunate about that right now, specifically for tonight, speaking on Derek White, because Derek White's performance 1 of 6, 0 of 5 from three tonight, took 1 2-pointer tonight. 1 2. Ended with 6 points. Derek White, we saw in that stretch, against Minnesota, against Toronto, against Houston. He was really turning the corner there a little bit and really playing like himself last season, really being aggressive, going towards the hole and balancing out that stat sheet of shots. Now we're seeing him revert back into the shot chucking Derek White, the Derek White that's not involved in the offense. And that's undoubtedly affecting the Celtics as a whole. Go down the list. Drew Holiday. They mentioned on the broadcast, we've mentioned it here on our broadcast, that corner 3-point percentage has been cut in half since last season. He's not a reliable corner 3-point shooter right now. He's not really a reliable 3-point shooter on the season as we speak at the moment. And furthermore, Drew Holiday going towards the rim. It's kind of the same conversation with Derek White. We know that both Derek White and Drew Holiday can go towards the rim and get buckets at the rim and really put all those eyes on themselves and dish out to other players. Specifically, if we're talking about other players, who are the other players? It's going to be Jaylen Brown, Jayson Tatum operating on the perimeter, Kristaps Porzingis, and that's really one when he wants to shoot threes, not when they're just coming off of one catch at the top off of a pick and pop and there's somebody in his face. But Drew Holiday, he hasn't been going to the rim as much this season, and he hasn't really been as physically dominating inside that paint as we know he can be because he is one of the more physical guards in the league. So just that starting backcourt has not been as crisp for the Celtics at all this season. And we're mostly speaking offensively here for the Boston Celtics because defensively it really does hone in on the whole unit and what everybody's doing at once. Because like we said last post game, if one guy's off, the whole thing is going to be off, especially if you're defending at the top of the key or on the perimeter. But going down the list, Kristaps Porzingis. I'm surprised Kristaps ended with more 2s than 3s tonight because at one point at halftime, he had 7 3-point attempts. He shot 7 3-point attempts to 1 2-point attempt. 1 2. It was 1 of 1 from 2, and he was 1 of 7 from 3 at halftime. Now he ended the game. He ended up being 4 of 10 from inside the arc, and outside the arc, he was 3 of 9. But that distribution for Kristaps Porzingis, he was just shot chucking early on. The distribution we saw in the second half was much better for Kristaps Porzingis. Wasn't really all that efficient inside the arc tonight, but Kristaps Porzingis, in terms of his health and in terms of how he's been playing, he's settling way too often this season from 3. There's too many moments where, Justin, you even mentioned it earlier in our group chat, that it feels like the first play of the game, it's a 30-foot jump shot from Kristaps Porzingis. Even near the end of the game when the Celtics, it felt like they had momentum going ahead and, we were going to create a little bit of a lead there. What do we see? Kristaps pulling up from 30 feet. And when I saw that shot, I was going, is that really what we needed on offense at that specific moment when we're going ahead trying to grab a lead? A Kristaps 30-footer? It really is that what we need when all of our success has been driving to the rim, specifically with Jaylen Brown and Jayson Tatum? And as for Brown and Tatum, I think these other 3 players, Porzingis, Holiday, and White, not being as efficient and reliable this season, it causes them to play hero ball a lot more than what we've seen in the past. Because last year, it was really a team effort on the offensive end of the floor. It didn't need to be Tatum dominating every night. It didn't need to be Brown dominating every night. Yet in these games, it feels like there's a higher reliance on Tatum or Brown to go out there and have a good performance because these other pieces on the Celtics, Porzingis, Holiday, White, and you could even go down to the bench, they're not as reliable this season. And it feels as if Tatum and Brown need to take over more often than not. Whereas last season, didn't matter if Tatum or Brown even had 20 points. You could see them score, 15, 19, below 20. And somebody else, you'd see, Holiday with 20 points. You'd see Porzingis with 20 points. Derek White, he would have 30-point nights on some occasions. And the team was winning more as a collective unit than they are right now. Tatum and Brown they're more hero ballish this season. And at times that can result in great games and great performances for them and what the Celtics need. But just speaking on the offense as a whole with the Boston Celtics, they need to be more of that collective, collaborative, cohesive unit this season. Because last season, that's what won them the championship. This year, it feels like it's all split apart. Guys aren't really playing the roles in which we're used to seeing. And that's when we're not really seeing the best of the Celtics basketball as we know we can, because Last season, we saw it for an entire season into the playoffs, and this season, it's been few and far between. And yes, we can give some excuses out of, oh, they haven't been together. It's only their fourth game together. There's still time to gel. But overall, even without Porzingis, without whoever's been in the lineup, just doesn't feel like the team is as collective this season. We've already talked about it in December, and we saw it again tonight. Even though the Celtics won, it just didn't feel like the team offensively, specifically offensively, just wasn't in rhythm for most of this game. And Rob, you said it, it was like we couldn't quite match our defense with our offense. We'd have good defensive stretches. Offensively, couldn't get it done. Offensive stretches, we'd be okay. And then defensively, we're just allowing lanes towards the rim. And I want to speak defensively real quick, too. I just don't see the intensity from this team right now defensively. Just this is more, I'm talking with everybody on the defensive end of the floor. It seems as if we're trying to make the effort to be in the right positions. And tonight, I thought the positioning of and detail in positioning in terms of guarding on the perimeter was a lot better tonight than it was on Friday by a mile, because tonight the New Orleans Pelicans didn't see as many open opportunities from three as the Sacramento Kings did on Friday night. But still, when you're seeing the New Orleans Pelicans just drive downhill towards the lane the whole game, you're not seeing the physicality. You're not seeing the intensity out of the Celtics. What I'm used to seeing out of the Celtics, or what we're used to seeing out of the Celtics from last season, is really that hound dog defense in which players, he's at the top of the key. He can't go anywhere. He can't get around any Celtic defender. In this season, it just feels like players are moving more freely, whether it's getting off of screens, going downhill towards the rim, getting off shots. The Celtics just aren't quite all there on the defensive end of the floor right now. And I think it's showing in these performances, obviously. Now, will this persist over time? Hopefully not. I really don't think that they're going to be playing with this level of intensity when the season really starts to ramp up going towards the playoffs. I think this team knows that. But right now, it's just not quite where it needs to be for the Celtics on either end of the floor. And it's showing in the recent scores that we're seeing. We lost by 17 on Friday. Tonight, we nearly lose on a game-winning layup by CJ McCollum. And if we would have lost tonight, I think the conversation would be a little bit different. We are touching on some of this conversation right now, but there's still a bit of optimism here because, again, a win is a win.
It's funny you say that too, because I'm sitting there watching the game tonight, and I'm thinking, and I tweeted this out on my personal Twitter. If you're not following it, go follow it, Rob. Celtics Talk Weekly, CTW. Quick little promo, self promo. But it felt like, so you're sitting here and you're watching this game, and I'm thinking that exact same thing. We're a week in. We're building it. But I'm sitting there and I'm watching it. And it does feel like we're really reliant on Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown this year, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, right? They're your superstars. That's very natural. But that's kind of why I tweeted this out just the other day. This Celtics team right now, where they currently stand, are closer to the 2022-2023 team than they are to the last year's team. Yeah. Play style, the reliance on the superstars, it's very identical. Dropping games they should win, being bad at home, being good on the road. And again, that team was a game away from the NBA Finals, almost came back down 0-3. If Tatum doesn't sprain his ankle, history could look very different, right? So we know what that team can still do. So it's not necessarily a bad thing. However, this was supposed to be a year in which this team took a step up. It was their second year playing together. You see Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown kind of truly enter their primes. Year 7 and year 8 is kind of really when 8 and 9 now, right? Oh my God. Is it 8 and 9 or is it 7 and 8? 8 and 9. It's year 8 and 9.
For what?
Brown and Tatum. That is ridiculous. Is it year 7 and 8? Oh God.
I think it's 9 for Brown.
Yeah,
it's
9. 8 and 9.
Counting by my fingers right now.
Yeah. So so really this team was supposed to be better and they haven't been. And I think tonight is kind of a perfect, example of that, 9. That's what I thought. 8 and 9.
Going over it twice.
Getting old, Rob.
Double
getting
check.
old.
I know.
Back
Wow.
check.
Almost a decade of these guys. But, that's, and I think that's the story. And this story is completely shown, guys, within this lead tracker tonight. Look at this. It was all Pelicans through a quarter and a half. And mind you guys, that first sector of the lead tracker, that first quarter, that's a consistent theme we're seeing here, where the team opens the gate and they control the game for really a quarter and a half. And then you kind of see Boston control that in the middle section, that second through third quarter. And then the fourth quarter has been super hit or miss with this team. Yeah. Tonight, it was a hit, but it has not been consistently like that. But again, guys, that first quarter and a half, those starts from Boston are becoming a normal trend. And we are now almost officially halfway through the NBA season. Like that, you are what your record says you are. And right now, that just might be who the Celtics are.
That is almost a reverse flip of that Friday night game where it's like the first quarter, it was, first 3 quarters, it was back and forth. And then the fourth quarter, it was all dominance. First quarter was all dominance tonight for the Pelicans. And then the remainder of the game, it was pretty tight knit back and forth. I think with the Celtics team, they really I don't know. I'm not sure what it is because you touched on it, Rob. You mentioned it earlier, and Seamus, you just mentioned it now, where it's like they're not stringing together consistent possessions. So it's like, okay, that was a really good defense possession. What does that result in? Oh, Kristaps Porzingis 35-foot shot. Okay, this was a really good offensive possession. The ball hit the paint, whether it ended up in a 3 or it ended up in an alley-oop. There was a couple really nice plays, pick and rolls tonight with my boy Luke Cornette, we'll talk about later. And then the Celtics go down on the defensive end and they give up a wide open layup or they give up a slip screen 3. I don't know what it is with this team. They're not engaged at all. At all, they're not engaged. I get it. Dog days of the season, Seamus mentioned it. But to me, I need to see more. Like I said earlier, I need to see more from Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown. But then you pose the question. Well, how much can we really rely on these guys? Which I agree with. I 100% agree with. And also, I do want to just touch on this really quick before we move on. You just alluded to the 2022-2023 Celtics. The Derek White that we're seeing right now looks a lot like the 2022-2023 Celtics. When D. White first came into Boston, granted he wasn't really implemented into the system, but what did he do that first year in Boston throughout the playoffs? He sat at the perimeter and he shot a lot of threes. Yes, he was good defensively, but offensively, he didn't have much of a purpose in the offense. That's what it feels like this year. He's just standing at that perimeter, and really we're only talking, if we're talking about him, it's just what he's doing at the defensive end. Offensively, he really doesn't feel included in this offense whatsoever.
And there was a play this game that perfectly summed up kind of the Celtics problem and the whole Derek White experience this season. And I texted you guys, it was a fast break opportunity where you had Jayson Tatum and Derek White pushing the pace halfway through that second quarter, I believe.
It was, yeah.
And Tatum has Alvarado on him, pinned down in the post. White is trailing on that left wing. Defender's playing a little bit further back. He takes probably a 28-footer pull-up 3. He misses, right? Up by 2 at that current time. You're sitting there and thinking, is that a terrible shot? Not really, right? That's not like a pull-up, a pull-up transition 3. White has been a good shooter. He's a decent pull-up shooter. He's actually a pretty good pull-up shooter. But if you look at that, it takes a little bit more effort just to dump the ball down low into Tatum, into the post on the mismatch to get the 2, to put the lead to 4, right? Versus that easy, quick pull-up 3. And that has been what Derek White has been doing all year long. And guys, that is polar opposite of what he was doing last year. And really, like, the plays like that, you watch it, it's those types of shots. Boston takes about 10 to 12 of those types of shots a game, where they're missing out on about 10 to 12 points per game, it feels like, if they had just gone the extra step. Attack the mismatch, right? Run that killer whale offense. Yeah. Don't bail the other team out. When the other team rolls into Boston, guys, they are hoping and praying with their fingers crossed that Boston is shooting a lot of threes and a lot of bad threes. And when they do, they're really easy to beat because they get so reliant on it. But when they don't, they're really tough to beat.
Do you think it's Boston's been playing bad, or do you think its teams have figured out the Boston Celtics?
I think that's a great question, and I think it's a little bit of both, right? Because I do think, listen, you've now had 2 years, the league has had 2 years to kind of fully digest and study this Joe Mazzulla-led Boston Celtics, right? And we're in a current time where the league adapts. I mean, me and Seamus have talked about this, I feel like a couple times now on the postgame show. The league is adapting really fast. Rosters change as fast as we've ever seen them. Players are getting as better, as like quicker. I mean, really. So I think it's a mix of both. I think teams are starting to figure out the Boston Celtics, but I also think the Boston Celtics are making life really difficult on themselves.
Well, I hate to mention the second half against Oklahoma City
Here
again
we
because
friggin' go, Seamus.
my goodness,
Turn
we
'em
need to
on.
get. I mean, I don't know when we're going to stop mentioning it, but that was the theme against Oklahoma City is really the
Yeah.
Celtics just chucking threes and not making the extra decision, extra pass to the open man, whether it was in the post, down low, or really just swinging around the perimeter for a better 3-point shot than they took. And that's really a theme with the Celtics team this season is just the shot quality in which the Celtics are getting specifically on the offensive end of the floor because we've seen so many times, yes, the Celtics, they want to shoot a high volume of threes because when they're taking good threes, they're hitting at a high clip, and that high volume really helps out with that, and they can really run ahead teams. However, at the same time, this team this season just has not been taking good threes. They're not making good decisions. They're not making the extra pass. They're not really engaged in what they need to do to make the offense flow in the way it should. And I can't really put my finger on why that is specifically this season, other than, hey, we won a championship last year and everybody's confidence is uber high right now. And they're ultimately looking at themselves going, oh, I have a three right here. Shoot it, shoot it, shoot it. When in reality, it's like, okay, we can still shoot a three on this possession, but maybe one more pass, maybe another pass, maybe a
Yeah.
couple more hockey assists to get a better look. And it just feels like we're shot chucking way too much this season. And in this game, it's what's a little frustrating is we think where we see it go away, we'll see it go away at times. Like the second half of this game, I thought it went away a little bit in the offense on the offensive end, especially when Tatum had the ball in his hand. Tatum was just chucking shots early and often in this game, and so was really everybody on the offensive end of the floor. But the second half felt like Tatum really dominated this game when he was going downhill towards
Right.
the paint. That's been a theme recently with Jayson Tatum and this team is when they win, they're usually going downhill towards the paint and they're taking better quality looks. And it's just, again, going along with the theme, though, that this team just isn't consistent in terms of when we're seeing that, when we're not seeing that this season. And it is quite perplexing up to this point. And I want to say one more thing about the lead tracker tonight. Probably in terms of just throw away the result, throw away the how the Celtics played, whatever we think this was one of the more entertaining NBA games of the entire NBA season for any fan to watch. 21 lead changes tonight. 14 times this game was tied, only an 11-point lead for the Pelicans early on. And the Celtics only surmounted a 5-point lead in this game. And we nearly saw a game winner, which would have made us just
Oh,
the vibe on
You're
this
right.
post game. I almost
Oh,
said
it would have been
cry, but I
bad.
don't know if we
It
would
would have been
cry on this
bad.
post game. It would have been pretty bad if McCollum banked that shot in. And I was thinking when he went downhill, how did we lose this game? How am I witnessing us lose this game on this possession? But we thankfully saw that shot rim out. But that
I was
is a
rooting
point.
for
Just
it.
to, other than the Celtics tonight, is that this game was one of the more entertaining games of the entire season.
So I want to ask you guys something, and especially you, Seamus. And I'm stealing this from Xavier, so I'm sorry, Xavier, but he posed a phenomenal question, and I think it's worth asking. And you know me, I am Mr. Quality, 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 right? I don't care how many threes they're taking. I care about the quality of the threes they're taking. But at what point do these open threes, right? These generated threes, good looks, when do they not become great shots anymore? Because the Celtics, they haven't really been making them, even the open ones. I mean, we've seen Al Horford struggle from the behind the arc. We've seen Sam Hauser struggle. Tatum recently has kind of entered this little slump now we're seeing with his 3-point shooting. Jaylen Brown has been up and down all year. I mean, Holiday and White have really, really struggled from behind the arc. So while I agree that the Celtics are really good when they're getting open shots, it feels like they're doing that at times and they're still not dropping. So at what point does that open shot for Boston, it's still not the best look? I mean, do you ride or die on this hill?
I mean, I think you have to because that's the team's philosophy. And if you're going to bank on mathematics and statistical analysis on the perimeter, you got to just keep taking them if they're open because statistically, law of averages. I know it's kind of a buzz phrase for Celtics Nation when Brad Stevens talked about it, Joe Mazzulla talks about it. But the law of averages should work out if you're missing a ton of open threes, there's a ton of open threes. Well, there's a streak coming in which we're going to make a ton of open threes, and that's just the case. And I can understand now. Maybe you look at it and go, well, some of these shooters, maybe they're just not the shooters which we thought they were at a certain point in time. But we've seen this team: Sam Hauser, Peyton Pritchard, Brown, Tatum, White, Holiday, even Horford, Kristaps Porzingis as well. They've been a team in which almost on opening night set the single game 3-point record. And last year they dominated from 3-point land the entirety of the season. So you have to believe in this team that one day, even these open shots that they're missing right now, it's going to come around and they're going to start making more of these open looks than they're missing. And I think you just have to lean on that because that's the team's philosophy. But if you go away from it, you're going to have to find other solutions to the problem of creating offense, which is going to come with going down towards the paint, going down low a lot more. But I would just say, in terms of today's NBA, that's just not really what the Celtics are built for. This team is supposed to be long and physical, but we really have not seen that physicality a ton out of the Celtics team this season. And I would say that their game is more perimeter oriented and perimeter based. So I think for the rest of the year, they're just going to have to lean on that 3-point shot and really creating those open threes and doing a lot of the same of what they've already done in terms of the balance of threes to twos. Now we don't see it the same every single night. Sometimes we see we've seen a couple games which we shot less lately and gone to the rim more. Maybe we want to see more of those performances. But we have seen performances too where, we're shooting 63 pointers and we're not even looking at the two for half of the game. So I think the balance is important for that conversation. But I think the Celtics, they're going to just continue to be one of the most prolific 3-point shooting teams in the NBA this season, if not all time. And if they hit those open shots, they're going to win by a ton. And if they don't, they could lose by quite a few, as we saw on Friday.
Right.
It's hard on that because open shots are open shots, and it's hard to pass up on open shots when you're one of the greatest shooting teams of all time, and you have a roster where essentially there's not a single guy on this roster that can't hit a 3-pointer. Maybe outside of Nemish Keita. I mean, okay, Tillman, but we have seen Tillman make threes. We haven't really seen Keita make any threes
too.
But I mean, every single guy on this roster pretty much can hit a shot from the 3-point line, whether it's 60% clip or a 25% clip. Every guy on this team can make a three, and that's what this team is built around. Celtics have the luxury of being able to play 5 out. Again, I'm a broken record when it comes to this, and Rob, I know you're right there with me. It's how are you taking these 3-pointers? If you're going to take 60 a game, okay, well, what are we doing to get these 60 looks, right? Are we doing the whole ISO shabam for 20 seconds out of the 24 seconds on the shot clock and just chucking up a three tonight? Shot clock was low, but I thought there were so many different other shots. Hell, I'll think of 24-second clock violation before I watch a damn 40-foot step back three. And that's what I saw tonight from Peyton Pritchard. I mean, that was just totally unnecessary. But I think you'd be concerned if you started to see the Celtics not take these wide open looks. And we talk about this all the time with guys like Sam Hauser and Peyton Pritchard. We're like, ooh, they've had slumps. It's like, yeah, well, I'm not concerned because I'd be more concerned if they hesitated and passed up that open look rather than actually taking it themselves. What I will say, though, is continue to drive to the basket. The Celtics are a dominant team when they drive to the basket. And as of late, they've shown that. They've done a pretty solid job at getting to the basket, getting into the paint. And if that's how they generate those wide open 3 looks, I'm all for it. But as far as the whole shot chucking thing, and David had a great breakdown of the 3-point attempt looks in which the Celtics have been taking this year, whether it's a specific amount of space that the Celtics have when they release the 3-point shot. If they're generating those good looks, bombs away, in my opinion. But at the same time, you do have to have that balance, and I think the Celtics have that balance. They just haven't really utilized it too much. They've been so focused on those 3-point shots, and I will admit this might contradict my point I made a little bit earlier on the Celtics needing to start games off better, but the Celtics usually get wicked trigger happy when they start hitting threes early in the games. A couple threes fall, and all of a sudden the Celtics think they're red hot, and they just keep firing away, and that just gets them in a bigger hole than that they can dig themselves out of sometimes, and that could come back and hurt them. But if you're shooting those open threes, Rob, I'm all for it. If they're wide open, they're generated good looks, keep taking them. That's just a philosophy, as Seamus said, the philosophy which his team is set up with.
Right. And for example, for our viewers, tonight the Celtics only took 44 threes. I mean, that's not that many, right? In today's league, right, you see teams hit that 40 mark quite a bit, but the quality was terrible. Right. So tonight it's like I am a nat, right? I'm like, oh, okay, like, yeah, we took more twos than threes, but guess what? We're still taking bad threes. Right. So I would way rather prefer, again, to see 63-point shots that are great quality looks that are generated within the offense, over 40 or 35 just bad like contested threes. So again, for anybody watching, yes, number watch and stat watch, sure, but really pay attention to Boston when they're playing, because they can be getting downhill and getting to the basket and not finishing at the rim. They can be dishing. So there is a difference. Don't just stare at the numbers and don't let that tell them the story, right? Really dissect it, really look into it. But guys, tonight there's a certain somebody, he's on the top of our screen. He's been there all year, following a brutal showing the other night, Friday night, at home against Sacramento. Jayson Tatum, he came out tonight and he kind of showed everybody that he's not the softest Celtics superstar of all time. Not even close, guys. But before we talk about Jayson Tatum, I do just want to give a quick shout out to the sponsor of our post-game show this season, guys, SeatGeek. SeatGeek is the best ticketing app. Excuse me, geez. The best ticketing app out there on the market, guys, and they have you covered, and we have you covered all season long, guys. At checkout, use code Celtics Weekly for $20 off your first purchase. That is code Celtics Weekly, guys. The link is in the top of our description down below here on YouTube. Again, big shout out to SeatGeek. Go over there, check out the tickets and what they have to offer, guys. But let's talk about Jayson Tatum tonight. 38 points, 11 rebounds. He threw an assist in there as well. 2 stocks. He shot pretty solid from the floor considering that 3-point percentage, guys. The thing I want to talk about on Jayson Tatum tonight was his ability to put together a great offensive game.
I knew somebody was going to bring that up.
You know what?
I wasn't going to do it. I'm like, Justin, somebody in the comments.
Oh, that's that. Yes, we got the date right. Okay. You know,
you got the date right. No, we on that date.
All right. That's fair. That's fair. Tatum bounced back tonight. I bounced back tonight, right? We both bounced back. But guys, tonight, Tatum, he had a dominant offensive showing while struggling from behind the arc. And that was the difference for the Celtics. So many times in years prior, we have seen that 3-point shot dictate Jayson Tatum's game. If it's not falling, he kind of shuts down at times. Tonight, that was not the case. And this could have easily been a high 40s, low 50s game if that shot is falling, guys. But when you look at this game and how it played out, Jayson Tatum, his ability to attack the rim, how important was that for the Celtics?
It was everything for Jayson Tatum, because you look at that 3-point percentage, 20% from 3 tonight, 2 of 10, but you look at the twos, 12 of 20 from 2-point land. And I really thought this game, and Eddie House mentioned it on the post-game show, pretty quiet 38-point performance for Jayson Tatum, because early on in this game, you didn't really feel like, and throughout, you didn't really feel like he was playing that well in this game. You see the facilitation, only 1 assist tonight. And really the 3-point chucking for Jayson Tatum. He was part of the 3-point chucking equation for the Boston Celtics, which we were just talking about last segment. He 2 of 10 from 3 tonight. But as the game went on, he really settled down in this competition, and his ability to drive towards the rim, his ability to go downhill, his ability to dominate the Pelicans near the bucket. And you even think about that play late in the game. He's making that high effort play, getting that steal, misses the layup, but then comes back with a powerful dunk. I don't think anybody thought he was going to go up and dunk that. Thought,
Right.
oh, maybe a little bit of a lay-in, and then bam, dunks that. Whole Garden crowd turns up, and the entire game really changes for the Boston Celtics down the stretch. But the 38 points tonight, the 11 rebounds, and the 1 steal and the 1 block, 2 stocks tonight, and the 12 of 20 from 2. Jayson Tatum on both ends of the floor, really. I thought offensively, this was not his best game by any means, because the facilitation, I didn't think he was really looking for it as much tonight. Early on, a lot of shot chucking. But you think about him going downhill, Jayson Tatum going downhill, and defensively, I thought he brought a much better effort tonight than he did on Friday, and really the entire team brought a much better effort. Now, their intensity still wasn't quite there, not at championship level yet at all, but Jayson Tatum on both ends of the floor was huge for the Boston Celtics, and it just really wasn't a typical Jayson Tatum game, yet he comes out with a 38-point performance, and he's easily the most important Celtic down the stretch. And this, I know, the MVP conversation it's been getting a little bit quieter on the Jayson Tatum front just because of the Celtics' performances and what happened against Shea Gilgeous-Alexander in that Oklahoma City game. But this performance tonight, I think it can add to that MVP resume just a little bit because Jayson Tatum, I really think watching the game, you thought, Jayson Tatum, just meh night. And then you look at the stat sheet and go, man, 38 points, and really down the stretch, he's the dominant force against another player in which the NBA wants to be an MVP candidate one day, Zion Williamson. Williamson really didn't have the best of games tonight, but Jayson Tatum in that big matchup, he came out and really put the beating on the New Orleans Pelicans late in this game, and I think that's what mattered most, despite all of the wonky facilitation early on in the game, the wonky shot chucking from Jayson Tatum. I really thought the second half is what mattered, and Jayson Tatum, if he's not in this game for the Boston Celtics, I think we're just seeing a 3-point barrage. Now the Celtics, they took 55 twos to 44 threes, if I'm not mistaken, tonight. Jayson Tatum wasn't in this contest. I think we would have seen more threes than twos from the Boston Celtics, specifically in the second half. And that was thankfully not the case, all because of our still MVP candidate in Jayson Tatum.
I mean, this was an important game for Jayson Tatum. Jayson Tatum has not had the prettiest week, despite winning Player of the Week last week. He gets called out by Brandon Jennings on social media. Unnecessary call out.
Brandon Jennings, sorry, can I just interject real quick? Brandon Jennings was a total bum when he played the Celtics. I mean, come on. Like, are we kidding ourselves? Like, this is a guy who clapping with the Wizards against Terry Rozier in 2017, and it's like, you're not even doing anything in the series. He's not even doing anything, and this man has the audacity to call Jayson Tatum a soft superstar. I'm glad Brandon Jennings had that 150-point performance in his career, but other than that, never really lived up to the high school hype. I mean, really just OJ Mayo part 2, Steve Francis, Stephon Marbury part 2. I mean, come on. Brandon Jennings, he's always been a Celtics hater. Get out of here with this. Sorry, Justin, go ahead. I just wanted to hate on Brandon Jennings since we had the opportunity again for the first time in 7 years.
I mean, okay. I forgot where I was going with that. But no, Jayson Tatum, obviously gets called out on social media and then follows that call out up with a total 9 turnover stinker in a blowout loss at home against the Sacramento Kings, where that loss, obviously a terrible team loss, but when your star has 9 turnovers in a tied game and you lose by 20 in the fourth quarter almost, you're probably going to talk a lot about the star player in Jayson Tatum. Well, tonight we're going to talk about him some more, this time in a much more better fashion, 38 points and 11 rebounds. Would have loved to see him be more engaged in the playmaking department, but honestly, I think he was just in such a zone tonight. We won by 1 point, and JT had 38 points. I can only imagine if the ball was out of his hands the majority of this game, what the score could be. But I mean, down the stretch, Jayson Tatum was huge. And had we not had Tatum tonight in this situation, not only would the 3-point numbers be up, but the New Orleans Pelicans numbers would be up and they'd be above us. They would have won tonight. Tatum really saved this game for the Celtics, had a few great plays down the stretch. One of his 2 3-point makes came late, and it was huge for the Celtics. And then obviously that game-winning dunk over DeJounte Murray off a rebound, that was huge. And then, oh my goodness, I have never seen somebody get a game winner and then instantly nearly lose the game for them. Miss those 2 free throws.
Should have had 40.
That was heart-wrenching. That was gut-wrenching. I'm sure every Celtics fan right now is on blood pressure medicine because of how high the blood pressure must be right now. But phenomenal game from Jayson Tatum. And it's so weird because Jayson Tatum is a superstar player, one of the best players in the association, yet he has such quiet nights where he's putting up these ridiculous stat numbers, and they're just so quiet and nonchalant. And that's why I believe Jayson Tatum gets all this hype. You see these former players, man, and here's the thing: I'm not disrespecting their game. Oh my goodness, I'm not. That's great. Well,
I am.
Jennings is
I
1-0
am.
against
You
Tatum.
you can't. I'm sorry. There's levels to this. Can't be averaging 11 points per game versus the Celtics in your career and be going Jayson Tatum, who averages 28 on the season, not against one team on the season. He's soft. Oh, he's soft as superstar.
And that's what
Celtics
bugs
hater.
me. And
Not objective.
That was my point I was
That's
going to bring
objective.
up.
Him
Is
being a hater.
the reason why specifically these former NBA players hate on Jayson Tatum so much? It's not because Jayson Tatum isn't putting up triple doubles. Like to these former players who, yes, back in their day, the game felt so much more physical. There was so much more trash talking. They're not focused on the stats or the actual how the game's played. They're always talking about how Jayson Tatum isn't doing enough showboating, how Jayson Tatum isn't doing enough bully ball. Like, why does Jayson Tatum have to do that? He goes out about his game in a mature way. He goes, he could grab 50. He grabs 50 nonchalantly, grabs these 30, 40, 50-point games nonchalantly. They win games while he does it. He scored 50 in a game 7 in the Eastern Conference semifinals, I believe it was. What did he do? 46 against the defending champions, Milwaukee Bucks, in an elimination
on the
game.
And
You mentioned the 51 in Game 7 too.
And we're
looking at Brandon Jennings.
And we're these former NBA players are so focused on Jayson Tatum not trash talking enough, not going about the game in an aggressive manner. Like, we don't need Jayson Tatum to beat his heart out of it after a layup. Like, we don't need that. We don't need Jayson Tatum to dunk on Clint Capella and talking him up the court. Like, we need that from Jayson Tatum. Jayson Tatum has gotten by just damn fine playing the way he's been playing, yet they're not ready to talk about Jayson Tatum because you don't trash talk enough. That bugs me.
Let him say it.
No, I understand that, but I'm saying the reasons why people hate on Jayson Tatum are just so ridiculous.
It's definitely forced, but I mean, my whole thing on it is one. Listen, when you got a guy like Brandon Jennings, right? There's a jab at
like Brad going in on Brandon Jennings right now. Look at him. He's pointing at Brandon Jennings. You can't really see him in this clip, but
we're down by 26.
I mean, Jennings clearly it's a shot at relevancy, right? You need to make yourself relevant. Tatum's
this is literally his most relevant play is when Terry Rozier shoved him in the 2017 Eastern Conference semis in Game 3. It's like this is literally his whole. This is your career, Brandon Jennings. Just this. It's like soft, bro. It's soft. Didn't even come back at Terry Rozier. Scary Terry had the mask on. Didn't even come after him. Just let him shove him.
I do think it's a shot at relevancy, but I mean, listen, Tatum, his resume speaks for itself. He's going to be just fine. Again, let him say it, because last time we saw some Tatum disrespect. It turned out pretty good for us, so I'm all for it. If you want to talk on Jayson Tatum, he will respond. And I hate to break it to you guys, but the 2020s, they're Jayson Tatum's decade. Whether you like it or you don't like it, brace yourselves, because he is going to run the league, and he has been running the league. If you're in the Eastern Conference and you want to punch a ticket to the NBA Finals, you got to run through Jayson Tatum and company, and that's been pretty established now. So
who else do we have to run through? Who else do we have to run? Come on, he's coming up in the next segment. Who else do you have to run through?
Oh my God.
Who else?
The floor is yours.
What is this?
The floor is yours.
Saving the league.
Luke Cornette. You got your flowers tonight. Luke Cornette. I mean, come on. I mean, I think, and this is total bias aside, I like who made this graphic. Was this Seamus? I like the dabs in the back.
Yes.
I mean, I genuinely, and bias aside, Luke's one of my favorite guys on this team, but genuinely, I don't see where all this Luke Cornette hate is. I don't see how people don't see that Luke Cornette plays such a stupendous role in this team. A terrific role in this team. Nearly drops a double-double tonight. 8.7 rebounds off the bench with a block. 4 of 6 shooting. He was, I didn't read the full graphic. I believe he was a +8 in the plus-minus department tonight. Come on, guys. I mean, Luke Cornette was phenomenal tonight, especially on a night where Jaylen Brown was struggling. Drew Holiday was struggling. Yes, Kristaps Porzingis finished with 19 and 11, but really didn't feel like it was all about Kristaps Porzingis tonight. Didn't have his best game. Want to shout out Al Horford, who had 14 and 14 tonight. So I definitely, I'll give a rose to Mr. Al Horford tonight. I'll take a little, I got a big bouquet of flowers. I'll take one out. I'll give one to Al Horford tonight. But for me, guys, Luke Cornette earned his flowers tonight.
Oh yeah, I want to make a stat correction. It was a plus 13 on the night for Luke Cornette, but this is why you get it, Matt. This is why you get it mixed up.
Ravens, Orioles. Bookmark that.
Yeah, see, it's right next to his points. It's right next to his points. You go and you're like, wait a minute.
Even better. Plus 13.
Seamus, I will say though, in your defense, the NBA.com, they got the plus minuses all wrong. They updated because I was looking. And they at midway through the show they updated, and so
we wouldn't have got him right anyway. So
yeah, so
but I mean,
wait, Justin, I do want to touch on Luke because there is a lot of praise to be said about this guy because and this is somebody who I was not on board with just a year ago today, and I eat my words because he has been nothing short of just amazing in his role. His ability to dive, his ability to attack the rim. I mean, it is so improved. And you just talk about a guy that doesn't make mistakes like that. You never see Luke Cornette just make a boneheaded play. And he's always so sound defensively and in that pick and roll. And really, I mean, he is, in my opinion, the ideal backup big. He just comes in, he doesn't make mistakes. He's a solid shot blocker, not amazing, but solid shot blocker. And he plays his role and he plays it really, really well. So Luke Cornette for me tonight, I will second those flowers. I'll throw some of my flowers at him too, because I really agree with that.
Luke Cornette is a classic Celtics player and a player that really resembles somebody that we actually saw on the other end of the court tonight for the New Orleans Pelicans, Daniel Theis. Now his play style isn't like Daniel Theis whatsoever, but Daniel Theis was always that center who came in for the Boston Celtics. Didn't make mistakes too often, really got the short end of the stick a lot with the Boston Celtics, but always came in and was a consistent presence. That's really the point with Luke Cornette, is every time he comes into play, he is a consistent presence out on the floor, out on the interior for the Boston Celtics, because on the defensive end of the floor, he's somebody that can deter shots around the rim, grab rebounds, and really just be that big force down lows when your perimeter defense breaks down. You have Luke Cornette on the back end there, and he's not the biggest shot blocker in the world, but he can deter shots, and he can really be that big body that meets guys going up towards the rim. And we always know the Cornette contest. It works both at the rim and on the three-point line, where he's just hands in the air, Cornette contest. And offensively, they use him a lot. The Celtics use him a lot in that dunker spot, but even in the pick and roll, Luke Cornette can be very effective, just throwing him lobs, throwing him wide open looks going down towards the lane. And they've been mentioning it on broadcasts as of late, that his offensive rebounding, very underrated in the NBA, very nice offensive rebounder. And he's always really that presence for the Celtics in that category, when we don't really see much from the Celtics in terms of offensive rebounding from anybody else yet. Well, I shouldn't say anybody else. Usually Pritchard, one of our smallest players, is our best offensive rebounders. Yet Luke Cornette, he makes up for that in that category as well. So Luke Cornette, he's a super consistent presence for the Boston Celtics, and really his time with the Boston Celtics, just every time we bring up Luke Cornette, has to be mentioned just how inspirational his story is. We thought in 2021, this was the battle of the trades tonight. We traded Javonte Green and Daniel Theis to the Chicago Bulls in a three-way deal with the Washington Wizards, and received Luke Cornette and Mo Wagner in return. That was a pretty good trade for the Boston Celtics in the end. Now, we did waive Mo Wagner for Jabari Parker, unfortunately, but here's what the Celtics got back. Not too bad. But this was a battle of that deal a little bit tonight. And Luke Cornette, we thought at that point in the season, just a player we're getting back because we're moving salary. Daniel Theis, we're trying to get under the luxury tax. Luke Cornette is going to be waived. Well, Luke Cornette, he's been here since 2021, on and off the roster, won a championship with the Boston Celtics, and now plays a vital role with the Boston Celtics off the bench. So where Luke Cornette is ascended to within this Boston Celtics rotation and with the franchise, always an inspirational story to bring up when we get the chance to talk about Luke Cornette, who was a plus 13 on the night. I know Greg Popovich is looking at that going, I'm glad these guys got the plus minus wrong because he doesn't care about plus minus.
Ravens, that was Seamus's graphic, by the way, man.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
just hand him
that
out.
was on me. That was on me.
I just hand him out.
Yeah,
I just
that
hand
was-
him
that was
out,
me.
Raven.
So I got to steal the floor for a quick second.
No, you don't, dude. You don't have to.
But I do just want to. I do want to say something regarding Jayson Tatum and his usage. Now, if you follow us on Instagram, you would see a post that could have been anybody within the Celtics Talk Weekly crew. However, there was a post on our Instagram. If you're not following it, get over there and follow it. But it was regarding Jayson Tatum and his usage rate. And the Celtics are actually very good statistically when Jayson Tatum, his usage rate is over 33%. I believe they are 44 in 4. That's a large sample size. So I would say that stats and numbers, they hardly ever lie. And if you have a 50-game sample size of a team playing very well behind our player spotlight tonight, Jayson Tatum, who almost had 40 points. He should have had 40 points with a couple of missed free throws. So yes, I do stand on that yes, Jayson Tatum and the Boston Celtics are really good. They're 44 and 4 good when Jayson Tatum has the ball in his hands. So yes, I am going to stand on that because I'll tell you what, Jayson Tatum is pretty damn good at basketball. So is Jaylen Brown. So is, Kristaps, so are all these guys. But the Jayson Tatum, without him tonight, the Celtics, they're looking at a loss against one of the worst teams in the NBA. So, yes, Jayson Tatum is your player of the game. And yes, the Boston Celtics are statistically 44 and 4 good when Jayson Tatum's usage rate is above 33%. So there needs to be some air cleared here.
Luke Cornette also, just want to get that across. Luke Cornette also has been just fine with the Celtics team. He is better than Nemias Queta. He is better than Xavier Tillman. He is better than rookie Anton Watson, who we have
on night-to-night basis. Queta has his moments. Queta has. They're a matchup-based crew.
Anton Watson is a center. He's a center in the Celtics rotation. He just hasn't gotten. I'm going through the centers that we have. Luke Cornette is. They play him at the 5. They played him at the 5 all summer league. I'm going off what I'm seeing him play.
Okay. All right. I trust you.
And I don't think no, I'm just saying he's better than every backup center in the rotation. Why is that so hard for people to understand? Like,
I'm not disagreeing with you.
Okay, Queta has his minutes consistently.
But let me ask you this. I love Luke. Right? Not to no ill will to Luke, but it's at the same time, it's a matchup. Like Luke, there's a handful of teams that Luke Cornette isn't the guy you go to. You go to Nemias Queta, right? So I think that's fair.
What are those teams?
We've seen it this season. The Sixers.
Queta is more athletic.
Just the other night, Houston. Denver. I'm sorry, Denver.
No, it's Houston.
Timberwolves. Yeah, so there's some teams. Nothing. That's not a knock on Luke.
I'm just saying. I don't know why people are so surprised with Luke Cornette getting the nod at backup center for most of the season. I don't see, and it's not that it's I don't get how people don't see how Luke Cornette has played very solid in his role. Like, we don't need Luke Cornette to come in here and put up 10 points and 10 rebounds. Yet he's pretty much almost doing that on an every night basis. I don't know why we think we need to have a Kristaps Porzingis behind Kristaps Porzingis. That is not going to happen. So the Luke Cornette hate, I think people talk about the Jayson Tatum hate being forced. I'm dead serious. I think the Luke Cornette hate is forced. I don't think that's a crazy thing to say. I think Luke Cornette has been just fine in his role. He has been fine in his role. Casuals, of course, aren't going to see that, but I for one think Luke Cornette has been just fine in his role.
Is confirmed non-casual.
I am not a casual. I watch Summer League.
All right. Well, you know what? Let's keep it moving here because we do have this little comparison. This is new. Let us know if you guys like this or not. Personally, I love this. I think this really breaks down the game. But let's take a look at the numbers here. I know stats don't lie. Sometimes they do, however you want to look at it. But tonight, let's take a look at how the Celtics and the Pelicans just matched up statistically, tonight. Obviously, guys, you see kind of the two things that stick out in my opinion, here are those rebounding numbers that the Boston Celtics were able to dominate a smaller New Orleans Pelicans team on the glass, right? Though that is a great sign. The Celtics were the number one rebounding team just a season ago. They've kind of struggled at times throughout. We saw it big time against Sabonis and company. Friday night, they really put an emphasis on that tonight. And then obviously, guys, that 3-point number. Boston, they did not shoot the ball particularly well at all from behind the arc. And they still managed to piece together a win. And then obviously the second chance points, guys, points in the paint. I mean, really, there is a lot to look at that involves the Celtics being dominant in the paint. That is a good sign. I know it wasn't pretty, but at least they're taking the right steps.
Yeah, those stats, I'm glad you mentioned that. Sometimes they lie, sometimes they tell the truth, because really tonight's numbers suggest the Celtics should have came out with a much bigger win than a 1-point win, because you look at those points in the paint, you look at those rebounding numbers, anytime those points, and I want to bring this up too, the shot attempts for the Celtics and Pelicans tonight. Now, the shot attempts for the Celtics and Kings the other night, that was an atrocious performance for the Boston Celtics. Now, against the Sacramento Kings on Friday night, the Boston Celtics took, let's see here, 84 shot attempts to the Kings' 102 shot attempts. So you're talking about 18 more attempts to score points for the Sacramento Kings than the Boston Celtics had to score points. Now, tonight, the Celtics flipped that. 101 for the Boston Celtics in terms of shot attempts, 86 for the New Orleans Pelicans. So 15 more shot attempts for the Boston Celtics. And really those numbers, when you look at the rebounding numbers, when you look at the shot attempts, you look at the points in the paint, you might expect more than a 1-point win for the Boston Celtics. Yet they really dominated in all those categories. And that's really where we're picking some optimism out of this game. Despite some of what we've been talking about tonight and the Celtics nearly losing at the last second of the game, if we really want to look at this performance in a whole, some of those numbers are certainly pointing towards something good for the Boston Celtics, because we've been dominated in the rebounding category a lot this season, dominated in points in the paint. And even the other night, we just mentioned it, the Sacramento Kings completely outshot the Celtics in terms of attempts. And if you're just giving extra attempts to your opponent, well, that's just not going to work out in basketball over time. They're just getting extra opportunity after extra opportunity after extra opportunity. And no pun intended for the Sacramento Kings and Mike Brown, who was just let go. If we just said it 30 more times, extra opportunities. But tonight, too, you look at that fast break number, and the Boston Celtics, they just weren't that great at to me, the Boston Celtics as of late, what's weird about this team is they want to play with some pace, but I think they've been just horrible when that actually is the case. When you ramp up the pace of the game, I think you see other teams really thrive in that category, and the Celtics get really hectic on the offensive end of the floor, and then they cannot stop the other team in transition. And that's what we saw against the New Orleans Pelicans at times tonight. We saw it against the Thunder game was the biggest example, and I know the second half against the Oklahoma City Thunder is the biggest example of that. It's just the biggest example.
Dude is dragging.
It's just the biggest example of that. And the Kings game as well. So, the Celtics, there's some good and there's some bad within the stat sheet tonight, but mostly you look at it with the win as well. There's a lot of good going on there.
I think that, again, we know that Boston can do this. We know they can get into the paint, right? And I think the positive, right? Again, what's the positive out of, and in my opinion, is a pretty horrendous win, right? Win's a win. I'll say it again. But one thing you can take from it is that, the Celtics, they were very particular with their offensive ability, and they were able to really, that second half, hone in, get into the paint, really control the glass. And that shows me that it wasn't an effort problem tonight for the Celtics.
No.
And that is what I'm looking for, because again, in the grand scheme of things, right? Let's put a hypothetical out here. Boston hasn't been struggling for the past couple weeks, right? They've been playing some good basketball. You look at this win and you think, okay, New Orleans, they showed up. They played a good game. Boston, they kind of were up and down. And right tonight, they couldn't really get it done. They were able to piece together a win. On to the next one, right? It just so happens that recently Boston really hasn't been able to string together a great stretch of basketball. So you see a game like this tonight against the New Orleans Pelicans where it kind of felt like, coming off of a brutal loss, that Boston really needs to put the pedal to the metal and run these guys out of the gym. That didn't happen. So again, when you got to look at these games from a little bit of a different perspective. So I definitely think that this is a decent step in Boston fixing what they got going on right now. It's not a great step, but it wasn't the effort. And those stats, they show me that with the points in the paint and the rebounding. So the Celtics have been playing bad recently. One thing, effort and complacency. And they didn't do that tonight. And I think that's why they were able to piece together a win and not completely collapse in the fourth.
I do think, and Seamus, I know that you're the guy on this program who usually throws out presses his guarantee button, but
not
I want to press your guarantee button tonight. And this is also a hope, more of a hope thing than guarantee. I want to guarantee it, but it's more of a hope. Celtics have the next 2 days off, right? They won tonight, ugly win, yicky win. Like, they're probably in the locker room right now, pissed off. This is the classic Deuce is sitting there looking at his dad and saying, "Dad, we almost lost tonight." That is like the exact meme that should be all over Celtic Twitter right now. And followed by, obviously a terrible home loss, blowout loss. They look terrible. Effort was an issue then. They should come out on Wednesday, despite being on the road, and blow out the Toronto Raptors. Blow them out. Now, what I will say is that the Celtics should blow the Raptors out, despite, because the Celtics have been playing so poorly. Celtics should be pissed off. What makes me almost retract that a little is realizing that the Celtics blew the Raptors out 2 weeks ago by 54 points, and Toronto definitely remembers that. Despite them going for Cooper Flag, no NBA team wants to get beat at all, let alone by 54 points. So that makes me retract that statement a little bit. I just looked at my calendar and realized that it is Toronto. But I will say
press
that
the button, there's no unpressing.
No, there's no going back. I understand that, but I just now remembered that the last time
we say it with your chest. I mean, you're dancing around this button. I mean, look into the camera and say it. Justin's like, oh, they might blow him out, but I don't know.
I guarantee they blow him out. But not
okay, but
sure.
stats don't lie, and usually a team doesn't get beat by 50 twice in a row. And like, you're big on the whole like stats don't lie. Well, stats don't lie. Teams don't get blown out by 52 times in a row. But I will press the button. I'll press it. I just pressed it. That was me pressing it. Celtics should go out in Toronto and blow them out. They should be pissed. Listen, I understand a win is a win is a win, especially when you're struggling. I get it. Blah, 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 blah. Mainstream media bullshit. I get it. But Celtics should be ticked off because they are way better than what they were advertised even tonight. Jayson Tatum, yes, 38 points. Kristaps Porzingis was not good tonight. Jaylen Brown was not good tonight. Derek White was sure as hell not good tonight. One of his worst, if not his worst game of the season, and he has put together a few stinkers. Not too sure, and I said this in the group chat, why does NBC Sports Boston keep questioning why Derek White isn't top 10 in All-Star voting? I don't get why that is such a difficult thing. Maybe last year that's an understandable question, but this year I don't know why that was a question.
We were lucky propaganda.
We were lucky that Derek White was even in the conversation in the first week of voting, if I'm being completely honest with you. And I am a big D White guy. He's my favorite player on this roster, despite all my praise to Luke Cornette. The Celtics should not be satisfied with what they've seen here, specifically in these last two games, despite being 1-1. They should go out into Toronto, or I should say they should go up to Toronto, and they should blow the brakes off this Toronto Raptors team. Also, I mentioned it in the post-game show. You weren't here the other night, Rob, against Sacramento. Remember Celtics struggling a couple years ago. Who turned the season around for the Celtics? It was RJ Barrett, right? He hit that big game winner against RJ. We play RJ Barrett in a couple days, and the Celtics have played their worst stretch of basketball in the last year and a half here. So maybe RJ Barrett kicks us back into a gear, but I'm hoping that the Celtics go out there and they should blow the brakes off this Toronto team. I'd be pissed if the Celtics don't get anything. What do we want to define a blowout, fellas? What do we want to define a blowout?
I'd say they need to completely
15 or more.
control.
15 or more.
No, because again, think about it. You could so that's like just looking blankly at the game, right? Because you could be back and forth, and then all of a sudden, in the last 2 minutes, you win the game by 11. I mean, look
they need
at like
to blow the brakes
Sacramento.
out.
We lost by
wire.
17.
Okay, fine. Maybe not blow. Wire to wire. Wire to wire. Wire to wire. There we go.
Or you just want to see them control the game.
Wire to wire.
Good.
Well, guess what? I don't care if it's harder than a blowout, Seamus. The Celtics suck right now, and they still are miles better than a fully healthy Toronto Raptors team. A wire-to-wire victory from this Boston Celtics team
at home should be attainable.
But even in that 54-point game, was it wire to wire? Wasn't the Toronto Raptors, weren't they up early in that game, like 15-7, or was it? That was the Wizards game. They were up 15-7. The Wizards were. But then the Raptors, they were up early in that game.
I was at that Toronto game.
Somebody fact check us. Somebody go check that for us.
We need that Ravens guy. He's our dick life.
Go back to the post game. The Raptors. We have.
Go check that out for us.
I was there. I think Seamus, you might be right, because I think I was saying, because we called a timeout early, and I was sitting in my seat at the game like, oh my God, here we go. Because Scotty Barnes hit a couple threes to start the game, and I was like, well, that's how tonight's going to go. This guy shoots like 20% from three, and he starts drilling threes at the start of the game. But no, that's not a big ask. Wire to wire win. I'm sorry. I get it. It's hard to play a consistent 48-minute game, apparently, for the Boston Celtics. But that is not a big ask when you're playing – or
at least close to, right? Close to wire to wire. If you go down 4-2 or
oh God, obviously. But I'm saying, like, if we start the game, even if we win, if we start the game down like we've been,
sorry,
Ravens
go look for it. It was not. So wire to wire. We call that wire to wire.
But if we start this game like down 18-8, that's an issue. That is a big time issue. The Celtics should be pissed right now. They have 2 days worth of rest. They're going to go in with a full injury report unless somebody gets diarrhea before the game, which has been a common thing recently. The Celtics should go into Toronto and dominate the Toronto Raptors. That shouldn't be an issue.
Can we just like look at this lead tracker real quick from last game? I mean, it's so comical. You can't. The lead expands so vast that you can't even really see. So blurry. Yeah. Can't even see where they're at. They have 4-point lead. That's why blowout is like easier than a wire to wire. You're down. Like we're down. 8-2, 8-2, and it's like
I can't be specific.
Wait, no, because this is all right. All right. So yes, because in theory, right, it's that first 3 minutes of the game that you can go down on the wire to wire, right, where it's like, okay, they're going to get you to 6-4 or something. But when you talk about the talent comparison between the Celtics and the Raptors, if the Celtics come out right and play really, really aggressive and come out strong, get into the basket and doing the right things, there's a really good chance they can go and start off on an 8-0 run and then from there propel that lead. So, well, wire to wire, right, it is really, really difficult versus the blowout. I do think if Boston comes out with the right intentions, right, and against a team like Toronto, a wire-to-wire win really isn't that big of an ask, right? It's a big ask, but it's like against Toronto. I mean, Toronto's been statistically, they have been pretty poor this year.
They're the actual 8-win team this year. The Pelicans tonight, the Pelicans were the team we saw from the Pelicans. That team does not represent their record. The team that represents that record is not to call these players, but Brandon Boston and Jeremiah Robinson Earl, like all those guys. The Raptors. Yeah, that's the team we're going to see.
I'll be really teed off if I'm coming to you guys 72 hours from now and I'm saying to you what I said tonight. Well, the Celtics got to win. When you're in a slump, a win is a win. I'll be livid if I'm coming back here and I'm talking to you two goons about the Celtics getting a win is a win. I'll be really, really disappointed if that's the case. That shouldn't be the case whatsoever, Seamus. I don't care if it's January, okay? Because I know that's where you're probably going to go with it. I don't care if we had a bad second half against Oklahoma City a week and a half ago, okay? This should be a wire-to-wire win for the Boston Celtics. I'm not talking, we're down 6-2 to start the game. No, Celtics need to come out strong. They need to be the team to throw the first punch. Toronto needs to be the team playing from behind.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely agree with that. Boston has not thrown many punches here recently. I mean, against Sacramento, even too, right? Just real quick, Sacramento came out and they came out guns blazing hot. I mean, they made like at least 7 threes in that first quarter. which again, Boston was able to kind of take back that lead, and tonight even still. So it's like Boston they really need to come out and grab the game and control the game to start, because they're really tough to get when you're trailing against Boston. I guess any team, right? It's way harder to play from behind than it is in front, in theory. So I agree. Now, guys, I just want to have one more thing that I want to look at in terms of the Celtics tonight. Now, this is the leading players. Now, again, this is each team's leading stats in points, rebounds, assists, and blocks. I found this interesting because of the kind of like, all right, how do I put this? So again, the Pelicans, struggling team, but Seamus, you mentioned something here tonight, and I think this graph shows it. This was not as bad of a team that we might have originally thought. Yes, they're an 8-win team, but truly, do they have the talent of an 8-win team? And in the NBA,
What is this?
So look at points. The leading point scorer on the Celtics was Jayson Tatum. The leading point scorer on the Pelicans was Trey Murphy.
Oh,
and it goes
okay. All right. You should have gone over this, dude. Don't you? Oh my god.
I don't know. I feel like it was.
No, we're all like this.
We're gonna do that again. We're gonna study. We're gonna practice it before we go on.
but again, going back, I mean, the players wise, right? Comparison. I mean, the Pelicans played right to the Celtics level. So my question, guys, tonight, kind of as we look as the game as a whole, right? Kind of wrapping the whole game up. Was this more of Boston playing down to their opponent, or their opponent playing up to Boston?
I think it was actually the opponent playing out to Boston tonight more than the Celtics playing down, because I don't know if I texted it to you guys, but that's kind of, I was thinking halfway through this game, I'm going, the Pelicans, this is one of the first times in the last couple of weeks where if we were to go out and lose this game, I'm more willing to say, okay, the other team actually played really well, and we didn't shoot ourselves in the foot as much as we have as of late. And that's how we lost this game, because the Pelicans did play really well on both ends of the floor tonight, specifically on the offensive end of the floor. They were driving aggressively into the Celtics' chest the entire night. They were hitting their open 3-point shots. Trey Murphy, he's really somebody a lot of people talk about around the league, but I really think there's maybe one day in his future, could there be an all-star appearance out there for Trey Murphy if he gets those minutes, those opportunities, that usage percentage on a team, specifically the New Orleans Pelicans. You know, you have Zion there, you have a really caked forward rotation. Trey Murphy's in right now, but not just this performance tonight. Trey Murphy's been phenomenal most of the season when he's not been injured. And really, this Pelicans team, I think they're playing way above the standards of where their record says they are right now. The record just, to me, does not represent the team at all, because they've been injured this entire season. It's one of the most catastrophic injury bugs we've ever seen with the team, where you're looking at who's played the most games. It's been guys who are usually in and out of the G League or in and out of a two-way spot for the Pelicans for most of the season. So I did think the Pelicans, with who they had on the floor, played tremendously well tonight. And I think that's really not been the case for the Celtics the past couple of weeks, as we haven't been seeing teams that, they come out and they're just dominating the Celtics and they're just playing really well and the Celtics can't get over them. It's more of, yeah, the other team might be playing well, but at the same time, the Celtics, the reason they're not winning or really not even close to an opponent is because they're shooting themselves in the foot. So I thought tonight it was less of that and more of our opponent playing well than, say, a couple of weeks ago we played Indiana. It just felt like the Celtics couldn't get out of their own way whatsoever. The other night against Sacramento, that was the prime example of the Celtics just not getting out of their own way at all. And the Sacramento Kings, give them credit. They really created a lot of open opportunities in that game, hit a lot of 3-point shots, were aggressive going towards the rim. But the Celtics, losing by 17, they didn't do themselves any favors whatsoever. I thought tonight the Celtics played a lot better than they did on Friday and just met an opponent that was playing really well as well, despite the record. People are going to look at the record and go, 8-31, 8-32 now Pelicans. This Pelicans team, I don't know where they're going to finish, but I think they're going to challenge the play-in if they can stay healthy for the rest of the season. I think that's going to happen.
I don't think it was a Celtics were playing down issue tonight. Right. The effort was there, and that's something I harped on for 2 hours the other night against the Sacramento Kings. The effort was not there for the Boston Celtics, specifically in that fourth quarter. Tonight, the effort was there. Celtics missed a lot of really good looks, open shots. Yes, they did kind of shoot themselves in the foot a little bit down the stretch. A few missed free throws, a couple turnovers definitely didn't help them in their favor. But overall, I think this was a really stellar performance for their New Orleans Pelicans, who, like Seamus said, yes, 8-32 now on the regular season. This is a team who, remember the COVID season, fellas? There were teams around the league who were missing players. What did they have to do? They had to convert their two-way players. They had to sign 10-day contracts. Shout out Seamus's boy Alpha Rugamino. We had to. That is exactly what the New Orleans Pelicans have been doing all season long. They've been bringing up their two-way players. Their two-way players have had significant minutes this year due to the Pelicans' lengthy injury report on a night-to-night basis. This was the 21st different starting lineup we've seen from the New Orleans Pelicans tonight. And this is the healthiest that they've been. And they were still down two key players in Herbert Jones and Brennan Ingram as well on the injury report tonight for the New Orleans Pelicans, still missing two key guys. So this is the team that New Orleans is when they are a fully healthy team, or at least three-quarters of a way fully healthy team. They are a maybe not championship contender, but they are definitely a playoff contender in the Western Conference. And as Seamus says, the more healthy the Pelicans can get, the more contention you'll see from them from now until the end of the season, potential playoff team.
Let me mention this real quick with the Pelicans.
Right.
The most played games for the Pelicans this season, 1 through 5. Yves Missy, who we saw tonight play for the New Orleans Pelicans, who's been their starting center, and just really an unexpected rookie as well. I wrote something about the Pelicans coming into the season going, why did they come into the season with a center rotation of Missy, Daniel Tice, and Carlo Matkovic after losing Jonas Valanciunas? I mean, they literally went, this is our center rotation. They don't have any bigs. Now, he's played tremendously well for them, but he leads in games, 38 games this year. 32 of them started, and leads in minutes by almost 200 minutes this year in total. That's pretty crazy when your rookie center is leading the team in minutes by nearly 200 minutes. But after that, Brandon Boston Jr., number 2 in games this year. Javonte Green, number 3. Jeremiah Robinson Earl, number 4. And Daniel Tice, number 5. I mean, if those are the players who are playing the most games for you, you're going to have an 8-31 record. Now, not to put down these players, but guess what? They're not a starting 5 in the NBA at all. They're really more towards the bottom of a roster, if anything. And that's really who's been playing for the Pelicans this season. You hope the Pelicans are going to have a lot more health going forward. But already, I mean, they've just had like we said, catastrophic. They said it on the broadcast, Celtics broadcast, catastrophic injury bug this season. When you're seeing those players at the top of the roster play, or really the bottom of the roster play as much as they had, that's just not an equation for success, as we saw in 2021 with the Boston Celtics. When you said that stat, Justin, about the starting lineups, my mind went, 2021 Boston Celtics. If you don't have a consistent starting lineup, forget winning games consistently. If you can't find consistent starters, how are you going to find consistent wins?
I know we were starting like Evan Fournier and Tristan Thompson one night.
The Ojale and Grant Williams and Romeo Langford days.
Yeah.
Oof.
I do think Boston or New Orleans played well, but someone said in the comments, they flashed on the screen. But again, you should have won by more than a layup. And
no, absolutely.
And I think that is like, I think we're all there. Credit to New Orleans, right? They played a good game. They looked a lot better than an 8-win team. Flip side, Boston, that was pretty bad.
That's the thing. Like it's not like Seamus and I are sitting here saying like the Celtics played a great 48-minute game of basketball. Absolutely not. Celtics did not play a great game of basketball by any means, but at the same time, the effort was there tonight, which to me is like, okay, it's not like we were just letting the Pelicans do whatever they want. Like that just wasn't the case. It's not like we saw Brennan Ingram on the injury report and we kind of let our shoulders down. No, Celtics did come to play tonight. Doesn't mean that they're going to win every game by 15 to 20 points, although that's, the last year and a half, that's used to when Celtics win games. We're used to a lot of blowout wins, maybe not so much as of late, but typically that's how it goes. But tonight, I do think the credits deserve the Pelicans deserve credit tonight, despite not getting the win against the Celtics tonight.
Yeah, no, I agree. But again, so for Boston guys moving forward here, I want to touch on their injuries because right now they're healthy, and this is one positive.
Yeah,
Even
Peterson's been out.
right, we do no Peterson,
Patterson.
not Patterson. Yeah, not
Peterson.
not Patterson. Peterson. But we do have to look at that. Now this is what I believe the third game in a row or second game in a row because White missed Denver.
game.
So this is now the second game in a row, which right now for Celtic standards, that is something that we are seeing this team consistently be in the lineup. So for you guys, right? How long, if we're going to use that excuse here for the Celtics, right? Hypothetically, that they haven't had time to acclimate each other back with the Kristaps guys in and out. How long, if they can stay healthy, should this take before we start to see the Celtics playing their best ball?
I don't know, but ask me that after next week because that is the wrong time to ask that because to end the week we have a back-to-back and then in the middle of next week we have a back-to-back, so that's a guaranteed 4 games you're not going to be full strength. But after that, I mean, come on guys, Celtics, these guys know how to play with each other. These guys know what it takes. I don't think it's going to take much adjusting. I will say, despite Seamus and I going head-to-head, toe-to-toe the other night, it is January, and I'll give it to you, Seamus. Like, if you're going to not be healthy and if you're going to have some struggling nights, let it be in January because come end of March, early April in the regular season, that's when you want to be playing your healthiest and best basketball. But I think this Celtics team, as far as cohesiveness, they have it. These guys are best friends on and off the court. These guys have been through the ups and downs, the trials and tribulations of the NBA season, both in the regular season and in the playoffs. I have no doubt that this team is not going to figure it out. Or no doubt that this team is going to figure out however you want to take it. It's just like you said, your question posed, it's kind of when is it going to happen? I will say I would really like to see the Celtics string together a little win streak here, fellas. A little bit more than 1 win, 1 loss, 2 wins, 2 losses. I want to see a little bit of consistency here to end this week. We have 3 games left before we head back on the West Coast. We play Golden State, both the LA teams in Dallas all next week. I'd love to see the Celtics close this out. They have Wednesday against Toronto, then Friday and Saturday against Orlando and Atlanta. Those should be 3 wins for the Boston Celtics. I'm not going to sit here and underestimate the teams like the Orlando Magic and Atlanta Hawks. Both teams have gotten the best of us this season. Both teams who we played at the time were both not healthy. It's looking like, fingers crossed, Paolo Banchero is going to be healthy for that Friday night game. Fingers crossed, Trae Young should be healthy for that Saturday night game. You're going to get to see 2 teams who have beat you this year. You're going to get to see them at fuller strength at which you saw them earlier in the season. So a really good test before the Celtics hit the West Coast. Need the Celtics to string together a few nice wins in a row.
Yeah, it's really hard to say when we're really going to start seeing the Celtics turnaround. I really think, honestly, if we look at the stretch of both December and January, that we're already starting to see it a little bit with this Celtic squad, even though some of the results just haven't quite been there. Because even look at the last 7 games, we're 5-2 in our last 7 games. And one of those games, we played an awful second half and an awful fourth quarter. You take out 3 quarters of that 5-2 stretch, those 7 games, and maybe this looks a lot different for the Boston Celtics than it does right now. And yeah, tonight's win wasn't pretty, but again, we're going to say a win is a win, and really grabbing those wins in the dog days of the NBA season is really what's important, because I don't think we're going to start seeing consistency out of this Boston Celtics club in terms of every night intensity starting to ramp up until after All-Star break. I really think that's going to be the period where we start to see more and more intensity out of the Boston Celtics going into All-Star break. I think this happens every single year where we kind of limp into All-Star break just a little bit, limp into the trade deadline. But after that point, I think we're going to start to see a much more intense Celtics team with a longer break. I don't think we're going to be... Now, Jayson Tatum Jaylen Brown, you'd expect them to be all-stars this season. But in terms of the all-star break, a lot of guys on the team are just going to have that week off. I think that's going to do a lot for this Celtics team because even looking at some of the guys we think are a little bit younger on this team, Brown, Tatum, Derek White, they're 8, 9 seasons into their NBA career, and they're really no longer the young guys. They are the veterans in this league. And you talk about everybody else too. Porzingis over a decade into his career. Holiday, Horford, way over a decade into their career. And really the Celtics, I think right now in January, I do believe this team is not playing as intensely as they can because they look at the schedule and just go, it's not as if they're not playing for something right now, but the games are just coming in motions, right? It's like, okay, and now, like say the other night, okay, we have Sacramento back at home, and then we had New Orleans, and now we have Toronto, and there's not really something we're mightily chasing because right now the number 1 seed is getting a little far out of sight, and the number 3 seed, there's still some comfortability within that cushion right there. The Celtics still have to be playing well to sit into that second spot. But I don't think they're going to get into a scenario in which they're even if we were to fall down to the 3 seed, I don't think it's going to get out of hand to the point where we're like 5 games away from the number 2 seed if we're the 3 seed. So I think the Celtics right now, they're just kind of balancing their play a little bit in terms of their intensity, and I think that's not great in terms of their habit building ability and some of the results we've seen lately. But I do think that it is a product of them playing basketball really intensely for the past really half decade, winning the championship last season, playing all summer, playing an early preseason where they flew halfway across the world, and then coming out this season starting 19-4. And I think I'm glad Justin isn't in here right now because he would hate this word, but they've regressed to the mean just a little bit here in December and January. And that was always bound to happen at some point with this defending championship level squad. But I think as we see the season move on and really get after that all-star break period and after February, we're going to start seeing late February into March and April. I think we're going to start seeing a real turnaround with this Boston Celtics squad where we realize, oh, this team doesn't look like how they did in December and January. There's a lot more detail on the defensive end of the floor, a lot more intensity, and their offense looks a little more collected. Now, we still need to see that moving forward, and we'll be raising alarm bells, like I said, if we don't see that in late February or early March. But as for now, I do think some of the intensity problems, some of the collectivity problems on the floor for the Boston Celtics, it's just the team going through the motions of what is really the true dog days of the NBA season.
I tend to agree with you, and maybe we're thinking a little too optimistically here. But I think my mindset currently on the Celtics stand and what the future is going to look like of this year is Boston played about 16 months of almost perfection basketball. I mean, like really perfect ball. You can point out a couple games on one hand, right? A bad loss to the Hawks a season ago where they blew a big lead, once to Cleveland, game 2 against Miami. I mean, really, you can kind of know the game 4 against the finals against Dallas. Like, there's a couple games, Charlotte last year. I mean, there's a couple, right? Right, and the fact that you can name them, right? You're like, oh, that game, right? That just shows you how dominant they've been. So the way I look at it is, okay, it's been a month of bad basketball. You'd like to think that these guys they're not going to just continue doing this. That's what you like to think. Now, again, we'll have to wait and see. But for me, my biggest thing with this team and whether or not they can, really turn it up, not turn it around, right? Because they're the 3rd best record in the NBA right now, right? Not turn it around, turn it up, is the injuries. If they can go into the playoffs as the 2 seed in the Eastern Conference, maintaining the 3rd best record in the NBA, right? Because Oklahoma, you're probably not going to catch Oklahoma and Cleveland. That's kind of like, it'd take a lot.
Cleveland, kind of the hardest schedule in the NBA. We'll see with them.
That's true. We will. We'll see. We'll see. Talk about means to the average, right? We'll see if they die down. I mean, they lost tonight to Indiana, so we're 5.5. Yeah, we're 5.5.
My goodness, it's finally. I think every Celtic fan, the last couple games,
waiting.
OKC, no. Raptors, no. Oh, finally, Indiana does something good for us. Man, thankfully.
So for me, it's can they go in healthy? Can the Celtics? Because really, like right now, like people are talking about like complacency issues and like, but like we're not like the injuries. There's an injury bug. The Celtics can't stay healthy, and I do think that should be a concern, considering right now, like last year was great, right? And you did it without Kristaps, but I don't think you can do it again without Kristaps. Because from what I've seen and what the rest of the league showing me. So really for me, Seamus, I expect them to turn it back up again. I agree. I think the All-Star break is going to be huge for this team. You'd look at guys like KP, Drew, and Al, who really could use that rest right now. I think you're going to see a much more locked in, excited, like really excited team coming out of the All-Star break. But again, injuries. They have to stay healthy. This team needs to be healthy, and you have to manage that really properly.
Well, that's what's so important too about going in. It just the playoffs in general is staying healthy because that can be the little margins. We talked about the little margins in basketball games and just really series in history. We've seen so many series in NBA history that's swung by one injury, one bucket, one possession, just go the other way. And we're just think about the Kawhi Raptors in 2019. If that shot doesn't fall for the Toronto Raptors in Game 7 against the Philadelphia 76ers, we could be talking about a Sixers dynasty. Thankfully, that
or
shot
like
falls
Milwaukee in 2021, Katie's foot, Kyrie gets hurt. Like there's so many. I mean, so many. Every championship winner in probably the past like decade, really all time. There's a handful of teams, but like you could go down the list, right, and pick, if he wasn't hurt this series, or if that play went right. It's like part of winning an NBA championship is no, you were the healthier team. Your luck was on your side. I mean, every champion in NBA history had a little bit of luck to go their way to get to the championship, right? That's how it works.
That's literally what made the Boston Celtics last year, the 2024 Boston Celtics, so dominant is we didn't really even see that many of those moments in the playoffs whatsoever.
Jalen's shot, maybe like that might be it.
And there was a couple of moments in the playoffs where you look at it and go, Drew steal. Jalen actually had that shot in Cleveland and that shot against Indiana.
Right.
And you think about too, Kristaps Porzingis was hurt the whole time. So the margins for the Celtics, how wide they were last season. I mean, all these little factors didn't seem to matter, and that's what I think skews the perception of this Celtics team just a little bit of how it's because of how dominant last year's squad was throughout the regular season and into the playoffs. I think this year the expectation is that dominance is going to wear off just a little bit, being another year long, other teams getting stronger around you, other teams gunning for you, and really having that history of, we won the championship. We're waiting for this moment to turn up. And we're going to have months like December and January where this team isn't quite playing up to their same level. So that's what I think kind of skews the perception of this team a little bit. But the injury bug, I think, is going to be so important one way or the other for the Celtics team this year, as it was really the other way for the Celtics last year. We didn't see Jimmy Butler in round 1. Round 2, we barely saw Donovan Mitchell. We didn't see Tyrese Halliburton in round 3. So all throughout the East, we really didn't see the opponent's best player when we played a series against an Eastern Conference opponent last year. Now, the Celtics this year, that's what we have to see is the Celtics be the healthier team, because if you're looking at it on the other end of the floor, now, again, we said Kristaps Porzingis was out last year, but the margins were wider. The Celtics team is going to really struggle if one of their 5 starters or one of their top 6 is out of the lineup. And that's what makes this health aspect of the Celtics so important going into the playoffs is really, most of the time in NBA history, it's those little tiny margins. So the Celtics, they have to be playing well and they have to be healthy going into the playoffs. That's why right now I look at it and go, some of the effort problems, especially against Sacramento, pretty inexcusable at this point in the season to be giving up a 38-point quarter to the Sacramento Kings at home and just letting them dominate you on your own floor. But at the same time, I don't get to the point of going, no, we're just not that team this year. Like some people do get to that point because our effort problem, we're not building good habits. But it is still a point in the season where I look at it and go, okay, if we weren't healthy now, say we were missing Kristaps, we were thinking Kristaps wasn't even going to be in the lineup until this month,
like
even
a
couple months ago.
That's a really good point.
So really, we were thinking the Celtics team wasn't going to be in the form in which they are. I mean, they're healthy now, but really their top form, which we saw last season.
They're healthy.
Yeah, the form where we saw the Celtics last season, we weren't thinking that was even going to come around until January or February, or even March this year. So we're still very much on track for what this team should be able to do this season. It's just there's going to be a rocky road on that on that track. And I think right now that's where we are with this Boston Celtics team. It's just not quite as intense, not quite as dominant as last season, but the roadmap is still very much there in the future for the Boston Celtics, especially if they're staying healthy and going into the playoffs healthy. And so far, they maintained themselves quite well this year. I know we've seen injuries here and there, but in terms of players sitting out back to backs, in terms of players just sitting out in general for precautionary measures, we've seen an okay stretch this season of the Celtics being able to preserve the top 6 and the top 5, even though the combination just, it seems like these players, it's not like we've had a major injury, but it's just the combination never works out. Oh, say everybody's in the lineup. Oh, Porzingis is out. Everybody's in the lineup. Horford's out. Oh, everybody's in the lineup. Oh, White's out. And it's just combination never works itself out. But in terms of the actual long-term preservation, there's no major injuries right now, or there hasn't been this season, other than Porzingis coming back, of course.
And also, it's like this team's not like an extremely deep team, right? Like OKC, look at that roster, and it's like, wow, they are really deep. They got some of these guys, 10th man, right, 11th man. Like, no, they could get some real burn on other teams. So, like, when one guy misses time for us, the roster really thins out. And I do want to say this before I close off. Despite Boston playing really poor right now, I know that, I acknowledge that. I still have a really hard time seeing another team beat the Boston Celtics 4 times out of 7. And I still see that playing out. If the Celtics are fully healthy, I still think it's them. Thinking about it, a team getting the best of the Celtics 4 times is a tough vision for me to see. So, I mean, currently standing, they're fair warning. All right, maybe I'm off here, but there's going to be some game 6s and game 7s this postseason. I know we're talking a little bit of ahead, but like looking at the trajectory of where the league's at, where the Celtics are at, this isn't going to be a cakewalk. If they were to do it again, it's going to be a lot harder, but we knew that. So, as for the Celtics right now, they got to get back on track here. And again, they got to continue to just take the right steps. And tonight, not really. But they're progressing. I can see it. They're trying, and I think that's big.
What's so frustrating really is if we just pulled out the leads that we had in Cleveland, in Oklahoma City, would we really be talking about this? Like, we would think, first of all, we would be 29-9, so a better record number, or no, we would be 31, 30-9, or no, 39. We're 28-11 right now.
Yeah.
30-9. So that we would already be talking about 30 wins, 10 losses. Oh, that's great. But then secondarily, you look at the Cleveland and Oklahoma City game. Those are the 2 teams who are running ahead of everybody right now, and those are the 2 teams everybody's going, oh, maybe finals matchup. They're disregarding the Celtics a little bit right now in the season. But Cleveland, we have a 12-point lead going into the 4th quarter. It looks like the Celtics are playing their best brand of basketball, even in that game in Cleveland. No Brown, okay? No Derek White in that game. So 2 big starters. We didn't make excuses for that in the postgame at all when we came in here. I remember that specifically. But still, we were missing those 2 starters. We'll make an excuse for it now, of course, a month later.
Right.
when the Cavs are, 33 and 4 or 5 or whatever they are right now. But
records are not our strong suit right now.
But yeah. We're falling way behind the Cavs, just saying. But
5.5 games right now. I do know that.
Win tonight, Cavs lost. I'm just saying, we make up that ground.
Hey, we've got another 42 or 43 games left. So
there's time. There's time. And the Cavs have a tougher schedule, I will say.
Yeah, so we'll see. Let's see what happens.
But that Cavaliers game, 12-point lead going into the 4th quarter. You falter in the 4th quarter, and then it becomes a free throw battle at the end. Celtics can't pull it out. If they pull out that game, they're 2-0 versus the Cavaliers this season. They whooped the Cavaliers on their home floor, only to win by 3. They let the Cavaliers come back in that game, unfortunately. But that NBA Cup game, we were looking at it going, this is the best performance of the season so far. Now, it was early in the season, granted, but that Cavaliers game, the Celtics, this is kind of where I look at that data point and other data points in history with the Celtics and go, when the game is big, they'll turn up their intensity. Saw that first half against Oklahoma City, turned up their intensity coming into that game. That Cleveland game, that NBA Cup game, everybody was talking about. Celtics turned up their intensity in that game. And really, just those 2 games, Oklahoma City and Cleveland, if you just pull out those games, I think we're talking a lot more optimistically about the Celtics right now. And even the Oklahoma City game, I hate to mention the second half again, okay? But Okay, it took 27 points in the second half, which was one of the worst second half performances in Celtics history. 12 points in the fourth quarter for OKC to win by 13, and we were within 6 late in that game, despite putting up such an atrocious half. So that kind of goes in with your point of, can we see a team, or can you see a team, or can anybody see a team really beat the Celtics 4 out of 7 times, even when these teams, the Thunder and the Cavs, the most dominant teams in the league record-wise right now, even when they beat the Celtics, it was kind of like, yeah, the Celtics shooting themselves in the foot. Oh, yeah, the Celtics 13-point lead, 12-point lead. They were actually in that game, dominating those games at a certain point in time. They just couldn't quite come out with the win. It wasn't an effort problem like we saw against the Sacramento Kings the other night. It wasn't a wholehearted just, oh, yeah, they lay down and roll over. So I do think moving ahead, like you said, there's a lot of basketball still to be played. The Celtics could still very much remind everybody, too, in 2022. We were the 11th seed at this point in time in the season. 11th right now in the season. We eventually we grabbed the number 1 seed at a point in that season. Now we finished second. But there was a point where we were the first seed. When we reached 47 wins that year, and we were 51-31 to end the season, we were the second seed. But when we were 47-28, we were the number 1 seed. So we went from 11 to 1 that particular year. Right now we're looking at it going, we're second. Why can't we make it all the way up to the 1 seed? And even that season too, the Chicago Bulls were the number 1 seed, I believe, at this point in the season.
They were. And then
6th.
Lonzo got hurt.
So a lot of basketball to be played, a lot to be said for the Celtics team, Cavaliers, Oklahoma City Thunder. We're still far, far away from June still. So for any of that long-term talk, we sit here in January. These are the dog days even for us to talk about this team.
Let me introduce you to the 2015 Hawks, to the 2018 Raptors, to the 2021 Utah Jazz, the 2022 Phoenix Suns. Yes. Yep. So again, regular season, it feels like almost every year there's this one powerhouse regular season team that is climbing on the best team in the league's doorstep, and it's the new shiny thing, and then LeBron James shows up and crushes their dreams. So maybe Jayson
2018 Rockets too. Remember that?
Oh yeah. Yes. So again, a lot of basketball. The Celtics, they have to get better though. And they're going to look to do that this next Wednesday night back home at the TD Garden against the Toronto Raptors, the 8-31 Toronto Raptors, guys. That tip-off time is at 7:30 Eastern time. However, after the final buzzer sounds over there, head right back here to the Celtics Talk Weekly YouTube channel for another CTW postgame show. Guys, I will say before I close off the show, if your post notifications are not turned on, turn them on, guys, so you'll get alerted when we go live. Sometimes you go live 30 minutes after the game. Sometimes we're 10 to 15, so you never really know. We do post online, but on our socials. But again, turn on the bell.
Like the video and subscribe as well. Helps us tremendously on YouTube.
Yeah. So again, we appreciate all the support we have been getting. We've been doing a lot of work over here. We're seeing it, you guys. Looking like you guys have been enjoying these. We've been enjoying them too. So again, guys, don't forget, like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell. I sound like a YouTuber right now. But again, guys, you know what time it is. Cue that music. And until next time, go Celtics.